going now?
Yep. Thank you so much.
Love you lots.
Love
and
you.
lots.
He's getting me ice cream while I film. I feel so loved right now. So hey girls, I already tried filming this video once.
Oh, sorry, I forgot the keys.
Oh, that's okay. You're getting me ice cream. It's fine. Bye. So hey girls, so I already tried filming this video one time and my camera is just being so weird lately. It was like focusing on everything but me and it was super distracting. So we're gonna try this again. So today I want to talk about grief and anger and loss and all those things because I think it's really easy for us as Christians to feel guilty over the grieving process. To feel almost like, but if I really loved God or I really trusted him, I wouldn't feel this way. I wouldn't feel so sad or so empty or so angry or whatever it is I feel right now. But really the grieving process is so important. It's actually a healing process and I don't think we can fully heal from loss unless we go through the grieving process. So today I want to share with you about the 5 stages of grief. And first, before we start into those stages, I just want to talk for a second about emotions. Because I think as Christians, we have this tendency to put emotions into one of 2 categories. There's the bad category where like anger goes, and there's the good category where happiness goes. And I was talking to my counselor about this the other day, and I love how he said it. He was just like, emotions just are. They're not necessarily good and bad in and of themselves. Like they just are. And what you do with it is what matters. And that can be good or that can be bad, but the emotion itself just is. And pretty much every emotion has both a clean version and a polluted version. So he gave the example of with anger, which we tend to think of as a bad emotion. Well, he said with anger, the clean version is to share that anger with the person that it affects and share it in a healthy way, in a kind way. And he said that actually builds intimacy in a relationship. And he said if you look at marriages that are deep and intimate, you'll usually see that the spouses are able to actually share their feelings with each other in a kind and beneficial way, in a clean way. And he said, you know, it's kind of the same with God. Like if we want to come closer to him, we need to share our emotions with him. And we can do that in a clean way or in a polluted way. So for anger, the polluted way would be like stomping around the house and yelling and swearing and calling people names because you're mad. And I think it's interesting to think about this for other emotions too, like happiness, which we tend to put in the good camp. But happiness can be clean or polluted as well. There's the clean version that's like, I just love it. It's a beautiful day. Like, thank you, God, I'm so happy. And then there's the polluted version that's like, I feel so happy right now because that person failed. And I'm prettier than they are today, and so I feel great about myself. And I think we've all experienced happiness in both those forms. And so as you're going through the stages of grief, you'll experience different emotions that sometimes as Christians we don't think we should be experiencing. Like a sense of emptiness or sadness or loss or anger. Like we feel bad about those emotions. I've heard from so many of you girls saying like, I feel like I shouldn't feel this way. And honestly, like it's part of the grieving process. It's normal. And the important thing is to take it to God and experience it with him and talk with him about it and talk with people you trust about it. So the 5 stages of grief were created by this lady named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in the 60s. And basically, I think she was a psychologist. She just observed human behavior and realized that most people go through these 5 stages when they're grieving a loss. And the stages look different for different people. Sometimes there are different orders. They take different amounts of time. There's no like, this one should be over in 6 weeks. It's just like different for each person and uniquely personal. And I think these stages can come for all different kinds of loss, whether it's losing a person you loved or a dream that you had, or even an ability. Like I heard from one girl recently who was in a really bad car accident and lost some abilities that she used to have and is grieving the loss of those. And so if you're in a place of grieving loss, I want you to know about these 5 stages of grief that are normal and okay and part of the healing process. So the first stage of grief is denial. It's basically this shock or this numbness. Like you can't really process what's happened yet. You're just feeling like numb, and it's your way of coping initially. And when people leave that stage and enter the next stage, which is anger, a lot of times they feel like they're regressing, like taking steps backward, but you're actually taking a step forward, because anger means that you are finally coming face to face, coming to terms with everything that you lost. And you have to recognize that before you can grieve it. And then eventually you'll be able to work through and heal from that and say, I've recognized the depths of what I've lost, and God, I'm gonna give it to you. So that stage of anger, you can feel angry at yourself, at other people, at God. And again, I just wanna stress this with emotions. Like when you feel that anger, that is a normal part of the grieving process, and it's part of what's going to help you find freedom eventually. And again, you can express that in a clean way or a polluted way, but the important thing is that you take that to God and you take that to people you trust and share that with them. And this is where a counselor can be so helpful to help you figure out, what do I do with this specific anger? Do I share that with somebody? Do I just work through it myself with God? How do I express it in a way that's healthy and that's clean? But again, it's okay if you're feeling angry. It is just a part of the process toward healing. So then you reach the third stage of grief, which I always forget. What is the third stage? My husband's texting me about ice cream. Hold on. Oh, he's headed back. Okay. So the third stage of grief, I love that I'm talking about grieving and ice cream at the same time. I guess that kind of goes though. That's fitting. It's like chocolate ice cream and sadness. Perfect match. Anyway, what is the third stage that I always forget? Bargaining. And this is like all the what if and if only questions. So like, what if I had done things differently? What if I had been there? And it's easy to start blaming yourself or even other people during this stage. And I actually think the story of Mary is a really good example of the bargaining phase. In John 11, we learn that Lazarus died, who was Mary's brother. And when Jesus arrives, Mary comes to him and she's like, Lord, if you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. And I think that we feel that sometimes too, like, God, like, I know you're all powerful. You could have stop this and I don't understand why you didn't yet. And I mean, you see like David asking questions like that, like why do good things happen to bad people? That's like a big theme that you see in the Psalms. You see Job asking questions like this, like, God, what did I do wrong? Like, I don't understand, like, show me what I did wrong that you're punishing me for. Like, I think you see this a lot in the scriptures, this example of like the anger and the bargaining phases expressed in clean ways to God. And again, the important thing is don't try to hide it. God already knows how you're feeling. Bring it to him, talk about it with him. So then the fourth stage is depression. And this isn't talking about a mental health depression. It's talking about like this deep sense of sadness or emptiness. Like you're recognizing the depths of what you have lost and coming to terms with that. And again, this is something that we often feel bad about. Like, but I'm a Christian. I know that God fills me. Like, why do I feel so sad right now? And it's a part of the process. I think it's a part of the process of surrendering the loss to God too. You have to like really look in the face and know what you are dealing with, what you are surrendering before you can actually give it to God. And this phase can turn into a more serious like mental health depression. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Again, having people, counselors, your community, keeping an eye on you, walking you through this can help a ton. But it is okay to feel those things. It is okay to feel that sadness and that sense of deep loss and really grieving what you've lost. And then the fifth stage is acceptance. And that doesn't mean that you're like okay with what happened, but it means that you've realized that there's going to be a new normal, a new way of doing things, and you're going to learn to adjust and to live in that new normal. And as you're walking through the stages of grief, if this is something you're really struggling with, I would really encourage you to check out the Sensible Shoes series. It's like my number one favorite series for Christian girls. There are 3 books. I definitely own all of them, and there's a 4th coming out soon. And these books are amazing, and they talk a lot about grief and loss and how to experience that with God. And so one of the things I love about this series is it talks about how we like to use periods and exclamation marks in our life stories. So it's like, I lost this person, exclamation mark. Our relationship is over, end of sentence. But the author says God, on the other hand, is a fan of commas. And it's like, I lost this, but like we have no idea what God is going to do in our lives and what the rest of the story is and the sentences that he is still writing. Like, this is not the end of your story. There's not a period there, it's a comma. And I love that. And the author also talks about living in this tension of grieving while hoping at the same time. And I think that's a beautiful picture of what grieving looks like for us as Christians, because we have that hope, like knowing, like C.S. Lewis said, that there are far better things ahead than anything we leave behind on this earth. And knowing that this world is not our home, and yet we still go through the grieving process, and it's okay to feel it with all those emotions and experience that with God, but we're living in this constant tension of grieving and hoping at the same time. And so girls, I hope that this can really encourage you to know it's okay if you're feeling these things, this anger, this grief, this loss. It is okay. And I think we need to know that as Christians. This is normal, and it's actually part of the healing process. If you skip grieving a loss, I really don't think we can ever heal from it or surrender it. We're just burying it inside, and it will fester and turn into bitterness or regret or depression. But if we can work through it with God, experience those emotions with God, then we can finally find healing. As always, I would love to hear from you in the comments, and I can't wait to see you again Friday. Love you girls. Bye.
Do you want?
This man is good to me.